because it's very good for their CV as well. So I do have one very small thing to say. I do have a slight access requirement, so just don't speak as fast and loud as you physically can. It will input my ability to track. But I would now like to give the opportunity for my panel to introduce them as they appear on the tab.
Hi everyone, this is Alia and I'll be a panelist for this Open Grand Finals. Congrats to all the teams that made it this far, and yeah, good luck to everyone.
Perfect.
I'm Chloe, I'll be paneling as well. Good luck, everyone.
Perfect.
Hello guys, I'm Naman. I'll be paneling as well. Hoping for a really great debate. Congratulations on making to the final.
Perfect. And Jake?
Okay, sorry, I was having trouble unmuting. So my name is Hajake. I would be a panelist for this round. Congratulations for making it to the finals, and may the best team wins.
Perfect. I encourage all teams to time each other. One, because it's good to know when to take an next step peer-wise, but two, it's just good practice. I will be raising my hands at 7 minutes 15 to say we're not taking any more time, and then we'll cut you off at 7 minutes 30. But I will not be putting timestamps into the chat. Without any further ado, I'd like to invite the Prime Minister to open the debate that stands in their name. Hear, hear.
Cool. Hi guys. Am I audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
Thank you for that. Happy to be here. Hello everyone. My name is Joseph. No preferred pronouns. POI via chat. I'll do a countdown before I begin my speech. If anything's like weird with the internet and all that stuff, let me know. Should be all good. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, oh Captain, my Captain. For those of you who are unaware, the inspiration of this motion with the novel of an info slide is actually from the movie or book called The Dead Poets Society, of which they recite that phrase, and the Dead Poets Society collectively refers to the class that Mr. Keating had taught. The group of people, which include Todd Anderson and Neil Perry, may he rest in peace because he died, and this class was led by the legendary Mr. Keating. Mr. Keating in the movie was played by Robin Williams, RIP as well, and what this debate really is about is the moral dilemma that Anderson is facing towards the end, or in this debate, like I'm not going to limit it to like the book or the movie, like in this context, he's facing a dilemma in terms of self-preservation or trying to be able to save someone important to him. That is to say, this debate is an actor motion with an embedded policy of having to be able to sign the report and be able to like frame or put Mr. Keating in a position of disadvantage, of which we need to understand a couple of very important things. The first thing is that Todd Anderson is under an intense amount of pressure and is facing a lot of cognitive dissonance. His friend just died. He's facing a lot of pressure and uncertainty about his own future. And given like where this debate is kind of set, there's a lot of limited access to information given that this happens in the 50s, right? So there's some sort of like time place set in terms of this happening. But we think that ultimately he faces a lot of pressure as a man versus man conflict, also from his parents demanding him to be successful when they pay a lot of money to send him to this school. So the dilemma he faces is like, does he sign this and secure his own future and or not put him in so much risk because there might be more investigation or he might like get kicked out, which will set him back and even cripple his chance of being able to go to uni and get a better life? Or does he like not sign it and maybe principally defend Mr. Keating and stay true to the collective nature of the Dead Poet Society, which really represents a lot of liberal arts and critical thinking and marching to the beat of your own drum? We think the point in which he has to make this decision is barred and riddled by so much uncertainty, which include but is not limited to, number one, you don't know what the school and headmaster and parent teachers association of the Welton Academy want. They want a fall guy because a student just died, meaning it's possible that they're pinning this blame on Mr. Keating, who is the authority and adult who is likely possibly influencing most recently what happened to Neil Perry when he took his own life. That's the attributable cause. But of course, it's probably not Keating's fault. Perry and Anderson love and respect Keating, but in terms of how this took a dark turn because Perry killed himself, it's entirely possible that he killed himself for a multitude of reasons. And I don't think this debate's about why Perry killed himself or whether or not Keating is to blame, but uniquely about what Anderson has to do in this particular context, whether he has to do that. And we think that ultimately, he needs to be able to preserve himself and truly be able to protect himself because his own interest, especially given how it's characterized, how he thinks, how the society is like at that time, even if he's been influenced to be like selfless and perpetuate different kinds of values. The second uncertainty is, bro, he doesn't know at that point what other students might do. Meaning, even if he does sign it to be the moral guy or the good guy, it might not have any net change because Keating could potentially get cooked either way if majority of students do wreck him with that regard, or even if they don't, and this is the best case, right? Like all the students go, oh, captain, my captain, and be consistent and try to save him. They might try to wreck him in potentially other ways, right? Like accuse him of certain things, maybe even fabricate or plant evidence, because we also have to be empathetic to the institution of the academy and the school and the parent-teachers association. A student offed himself. Of course, in that society, the norms of the patriarchy and conservatism, like being able to do what you have to do, not go into like acting and all these things that Perry did, is largely the standard of being able to follow your particular parent. Meaning both Anderson and Perry were under immense amounts of pressure, and what we are motivated by on side opening government is, we don't want to put Anderson in an emotionally vulnerable state that he might necessarily regret, because he might pull off a Perry, God forbid, in the worst case, and do some amount of self-harm at the point in which he thinks he wants to save Keating, or that's at least what he might be conditioned to do, because that might be easy. But the harder decision is to be selfish. The harder decision is to be able to protect yourself and truly march to the beat of your own drum. That is actually principally consistent with what Keating's actually telling and taught you to do. Ladies and gentlemen, in this life, we all make decisions. We regret some things. We regret shitty arguments we've made in the prelims. Maybe like my partner, you regret making me Iron Man certain rounds this tournament. And just in that situation, that individual, Anderson, might regret it. But that is part of life. And that's something part of what Keating's really trying to be able to say. And here's the additional kicker. If Keating is as mature, as responsible as he is, then he wouldn't necessarily blame Perry or he wouldn't blame Anderson because his job in their education journey is done, ladies and gentlemen. He affected them already. He's taught them to be a liberal arts critical thinker, and now it's their court to march to the beat of their own drum to make these decisions. And we think a huge part about maturity is thinking about yourself in terms of the long term of what might happen and not the short term for other things you care about but are not proximate to you. Will it hurt if he signs that? Will he cry? Will he be affected? Definitely. He cares about Keating. He cares about the society. He cares about these people. But in order to be mature and care about himself, he has to sign it. Oh, Captain, my Captain, we are very proud to stand on side proposition and open this debate.
I thank the Prime Minister for what was a fine and wonderful speech. Please may I remind teams to take and accept POIs. They are very important for engagement. And with that now, I'd like to invite the Leader of the Opposition to open the case for opening opposition. Hear, hear.
Can I confirm that I'm clearly audible and visible?
You are.
Wonderful. Let me just set up my timer. I have a whole load of papers, so I'm just laying them out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That might be a record for opening opposition for me. I'd like-
Could you
Somebody
please
said-
mute your mic? Mike, whoever this is. Or can someone mute him for him? Thank you.
POIs preferably in the chat, because as that demonstrated, it's very distracting when somebody is unmuted. Anyway, I'd like to begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Signing this goes against everything that you have become, everything that you believe in. The guilt will haunt you forever, and it will cause the real cognitive dissonance that causes all of the harms that OG talk about, from self-harm to doubt internally. Fast claim. What is signing this report, and why is it so powerful? Simple. It is a clear and decisive action that you can never go back on. This is a very precise contract that is written out in excruciating detail the exact reasons why this teacher is not just partially responsible for this person's suicide, but is a major reason such that he ought to be punished, and you are putting your name on paper. It will be written forever. It is a clear statement that is more powerful than anything else you will do. When you look to yourself and the things that you have said, this is the thing that came straight after your friend's suicide. When you think about what you have done, it is your action to sign this that is louder than any word that you have spoken, because this is what really has consequences, and this is really what matters. But crucially, it goes against the facts of what you believe. It is not just that you think that this teacher wasn't responsible, and the major cause, as the info slide tells you, was his father, but that it actively goes against the narrative of why your friend committed suicide that you believe. You believe that your friend was somebody who did acting out of passion, out of independence, the exact thing that Mr. Keaton has taught, and the exact thing that you now believe in. You think that the father was wrong for taking him away, which means that this teacher wasn't just not a cause of him committing suicide, but was the reason why he could be himself in his last moments, and it is his father that is completely responsible. And for the authoritarian actors, you are criticizing the light in the darkness, not the darkness itself, and you are doing so in a very concrete way. I think this is so wrong for you for 2 key reasons. First, it goes against everything that you have become, everything that you are, which is why it will cause a cognitive dissonance. That is to say, when we dissect the info side, we understand this actor. You had a low self-esteem because you had a pressure to conform to other people, because you wanted historically to succeed academically. This led to low self-esteem because you knew that you could never conform, that you could never succeed in the ways that other people told you, in these academic ways. The reason you now have gained confidence and gained identity is because of the teachings of Mr. Keating. What have you become now? As the info slide tells you, you believe in emotional expression, you believe in critical and independent thinking, and you believe that these are the fundamentals for personal freedom. This is why you've gone over your self-esteem issues. These are the things that you view as important, and this is who you are now, which means you will never be content in spreading a lie, in accepting conformity, because these are the things that you believe are bad for you and bad in general, which means that you should sign this contract, because doing so is the most authentic and honest to you. Critically, just like lying and not expressing the truth is the exact opposite of emotional expression, and we think that their side is conformity. It is conformity to selfishness. It is a broad amount of cowardice that you can never recover from opening government. Yes.
You know what? If you ask Mr. Keating whether or not to sign it, he'd probably be selfless enough to say, "Protect yourself. I've thought I'll figure it out my own. I'm an old guy."
No. Selfishness is conformity. It is conformity to academic success. It is conformity to the other things. You used to be selfish because you wanted to conform to everybody else, but you realized that you felt awful about yourself, that your self-esteem was bad. Mr. Keaton is the reason you got over this, because you believe that you ought to be yourself even when it harms you. Because this is the real way that people ought to live. This leads me on to my second point. Being yourself is not about being selfish. It is about understanding your obligations to other people. You as an actor understand better than anybody else that no man is an island. You were shy. You were anxious. You doubted yourself. But it is specifically people like Mr. Keaton that allowed you to come over this. It is specifically your close friendships that have allowed you to make you feel good about yourself, which means, yes, you understand that you don't have an obligation to conformity, to academic success, to all of these things, but you understand that you could never be where you are without your friends, without the people who've made you who you are, who've given you a community, who made you feel like you can be yourself and have your identity. There are two people you harm and two obligations that you break by signing this contract. Firstly, you disgrace the memory of your close friend. Following somebody's tragic death and suicide, their dignity is assaulted. Because the only thing that lives on after we die is our stories, the images and the legacies that we leave behind. Intuition pump. You would think that it is wrong to dance on somebody's graves and to desecrate the only memory of them. We think that it is similarly bad to take a contract which is telling a story that is contrary to what actually happened in the story of a real person
POI.
and to say this thing is true. No more POIs. We think that the reason this is akin to dancing on somebody's graves is because your friend wouldn't have wanted you to lie about their story, to disgrace their memory in this way, and you believe that it was a different cause of suicide and you want to fight for this. Secondly, you are betraying your teacher. Your teacher used his autonomy as an educator to take risks, to try and engage with people like you. He put himself on the line because he believed in the obligations that he had to his students just like you. You owe him this reparation for everything that he did to you, for everything that he owes you to help you. Note, we do not need to succeed. We do not need to save him job. We do not need to convince other people, but we have to be ourselves. We have to fight for what we believe in, because this is everything that we have become now. Everything because of our friends and because of our teacher. We cannot betray this, because otherwise we will be plagued with guilt forever, plagued with cognitive distance forever. And not that right now is an exact moment was so sensitive to this. Your friend has just died. Your teacher is in trouble. You feel like everything that you are is already being robbed by society, and this is your last chance to show defiance, show who you are, and just stop yourself from spiraling. Note, Note then, we think that the counterfactual is something that is good for you, something that is protective, and something that you ought to pursue. Lastly, we think that right now, fuck did I write down? Okay, there are three things that you can do on our side. Firstly, you can go to your teacher for emotional support. You can talk with them if you choose to about the processes that are going on and do what you can to help them. You can tell them how you feel and you can get support. But you can never do this once you've signed their contract. Firstly, because you feel so guilty every time you look in his face that you isolate yourself from the one person who could help you at this time of struggle. Secondly, because if he ever finds out that you signed this contract, he views it as a betrayal, because it is a betrayal, because it is so wrong, and because you are sensitive to this kind of blame, because you agree with him and you think that you don't deserve his help, you don't deserve to represent him. Secondly, I think you are able to fight for justice and fight for his story. Maybe nobody believes you, but I think you are the close friend of this person. Parents, teachers look to you to tell you about why your close friend committed suicide, which means that your voice matters. You know your voice matters. You are the person who can convince people who your friend was, what they cared about, and why they committed suicide, which means that maybe or maybe you don't stop this teacher getting fired, but you definitely change minds. You definitely gain catharsis because you feel like you are doing the right thing. You feel like you are spreading stories. Oppose.
I thank the opening opposition leader. Oh, 1 second. I thank the opening opposition leader for what was a fine and wonderful speech. I now invite the opening government deputy prime minister to continue the case for opening government. Hear, hear.
Hello. 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 Oops. Sorry about that. Starting up my timer. POIs through voice, by the way. Okay. Starting my speech in the next word. Ethics is not about feeling righteous, but it is about choosing the least unjust path when all paths are unjust in the first place. Operating government has already established proportional responsibility as the core analytical frame for this debate. Suicide, as stated by Joseph, is a multi-causal and also a deeply complex act for the actor that has transpired on this. It does not arise from a single influence, a statement, or method. And Mr. Keating's contribution to the school environment was the promotion of independent thinking and self-advocacy, right? So that influence in isolation is not harmful, but his lack of knowledge to see that his teaching is not calibrated to the capacity or constraint of every student within that system is also a form of negligence as a teacher. We told you that Todd is still young, and we are still asserting right now that he will realize all of this once he grows up. That's the connection of this analysis. And this already waters down the guilt trip claim coming from opposition, because all proves that he may regret it, as what Joseph preempted. On both sides, there's regret. At least we have a future and are okay with your parents and teacher in school in the first place, and you're still following and still keeping your own individuality. I'm going to expand that later on. Problem: opposition cries for justice, but justice for what? Justice presupposes a clear wrongful act, a legally and morally attributable cause, and that remedy meaningfully addresses the harm that happens in the first place. None of this exists in the context. In the 1950s, there's no legal doctrine, statutory framework, or any basis for attributing liability for suicide through parental influence or educational encouragement. Well, that's the reason why Keating is just gonna get kicked out of the school and not going to get sued in the first place. There's no mechanism by which refusing to sign the report produces accountability or any ratification or deterrence that opposition want. What opposition offers is not justice, but just a symbolic moral satisfaction for a long time for the actor. But the risk of all of those actions is just so permanent. It just happens in the long term. You're going to be detached from any realistic pathway if you listen to all of the rhetorics coming from opposition. Op is a lost cause. First push: should we confuse moral agency with moral impact for the actor? Opposition says that Todd is a moral agent and he wants to preserve his own teaching, the teaching of Keating and his individuality, and therefore we must refuse it. But, moral agency does not require maximum self-sacrifice when one, the action does not alter the injustice, two, the harm is certain, three, the benefit is just symbolic. Let's take opposition by each level. First, the condition and probable fear of Todd is also experienced by other students. That's why, even if Todd refuses, the ability to coalesce is really, really minuscule in this case, due to the fact that people in the 1950s are really reluctant to rally against situations like this, and they all probably want to have their own life and want to succeed. They don't want to face their parents' retribution when they face the consequences of not signing the form. Second level, even if they do coalesce, again, few students will just opt into this. Few people that can risk their agency and create moral symbolism. The impact that they can rally is very, very small in comparison to the majority of people that signs it along with their parents and school environment and school authorities action. Third level, even if the majority coalesce, again, the school still wants Keating to be kicked out regardless. At best, you created the noise, and that's nice, but the school authorities still wants him out, and they're still going to find other ways to kick him out in the first place. Fourth, why not just ask yourself what Keating would do for these actors in the first place once they initiate this action? Because it's going to be connected to the capacity or epistemic access of the actor. Keating will just simply dissuade them to do so. He's still your teacher. He still cares for the condition of his remaining student. Note, you should also realize that Keating, in a realistic lens, also feels guilt, and it's impossible for him to not blame himself to an extent. That's why this action, even if it's initiated, Keating will just rally against them. Joseph already clarified as a crucial point that opposition deliberately ignores. Mr. Keating's work is already complete. His role was never to dismantle the institution, but to plant intellectual and emotional tools within the students. That objective for the actor has already been achieved. The majority of the class has already internalized the lessons of independent thought and self-expression and personal agency, and they possess the capacity to apply those lessons responsibly within their own constraints. Keating's influence does not disappear with his removal. It persists through the students who are able to carry it forward, and you are going to have the capacity to carry it forward to other students when you still have the capacity to do so. You're still in that sphere, and you are not kicked out. You're not kicked out within those areas in the first place. A teacher does not demand repayment in the form of personal sacrifice, especially for a minor operating under coercion. Second, Todd, as an actor, has already extracted the full educational and personal benefit from Keating's mentorship. He already found his voice. He developed confidence and a form of self-identity that did not exist before. But signing the report does not erase those gains. individuality is not so fragile that it collapses upon this one simple act. This is analytically lazy. Individuals can still retain agency even when they choose a strategic compliance under threat, because Todd's inner convictions, intellectual growth, and moral understanding remain intact regardless of whether his signature appears on the document produced by an institution acting in bad faith. Finally, the O framing coming from OO is just simply perverse. It implies that Todd bears a duty to absorb catastrophic harm in order to preserve Keating's moral image. Again, you are putting all of the build for your individuality into dust when you do this. You don't have any ability to apply those lectures and spread those lectures to other students when you're kicked out within those societies in the first place. Todd does not owe any martyrdom to Keating. Keating, if anything, would just simply reject it. So the opposition's framing is internally inconsistent because it is deeply dismissive of the actor capacity. Note, he is also grieving. He is also feeling regret at this moment. They speak as though Todd is going to be fully autonomous or moral agent capable of absorbing all of the possible harm when, one, the school authority also kicks him out, and two, his parents also kicks him out. It's protected time. So the problem in this is that, are you going to assure that Keating isn't also going to kill himself once he do this in the first place, knowing that he's also vulnerable, he's also grieving, and you will put a lot of problem to the actor without any beneficial cost at the end of the day? Second, this is not just a speculative or manipulative claim. It is a structural one in comparison to all of the rhetorics that came from OO, with no incentive at all. Because Neil's suicide was not an isolated act of irrationality. It was the outcome of cumulative pressure. The pressure that will also exist for the actor once you do this in the first place. Opposition cannot simultaneously argue that the system is brutal enough to explain Neil's death, yet benign enough for Todd to withstand its full retaliatory force without severe harm. So, again, at the end of the speech, ethics is not just about keeping one's hand clean. Ethics is about reducing unjust harm in real condition. If refusing does not prevent Keating's dismissal, it does not exonerate him, does not challenge the institution, does not protect the future of the student, then the refusal is not resistance for the actor. You're just placing them in jeopardy.
I thank the Deputy Prime Minister for a fine and wonderful speech, and now invite the Deputy Leader of the Opposition to continue the case for opening opposition. Here.
Verbal POIs, please, unless it's like the last 30 seconds and I've been ignoring you. 3, 2, 1. Quite frankly, open government's pragmatic arguments are pretty and completely irrelevant. First of all, I don't care if I fail. I don't care about if my future fails. If I fail in like actually helping him. My best friend just fucking killed himself. How I respond to that is literally all that matters to me right now. Also, their moral arguments are completely nonsense. This doesn't matter what I do or do not owe to society. Fuck off. What matters is how I view myself, how I think society views me, and how I think when I've done this. Government makes an argument about how my future is important. First of all, this is not true. I can go to a different school. I'm thinking about the whole rest of my life is thinking about this is so more important. I'm intelligent. I have skills. My life is reliant on actually being here. 1, you never feel bad about compromising your future because you can externalize the blame. It's not your fault if you exclude or have pressure on you, so you don't feel guilty. But you feel guilty that you chose to sign this contract. 2, your academic future is uncertain, so it will never cause you immense stress. You will probably go to another school, probably do well, and probably go to university. 3, if you're so guilty and confused about your identity, you will fail academically anyway. You will be so lost and uncomfortable that you aren't able to concentrate on your schoolwork. You feel you don't deserve to do well. Not to mention your favorite teacher is gone. Opening government say I can just go to my teacher for support. Maybe my teacher's an angel and will accept me. This is unlikely because I betrayed my baby, but I feel like I betrayed him. When I talk to him, all I think about is how I stabbed him in the back. Now I have no one emotionally mature to support me. I have no one I can trust more than B, and I believe this is because I betrayed him. It's my fault. I'm not sure if this info slide about them having friends is OG assumed I do. If I do, they're going to do the same thing as me. If I don't sign this and I do, now I have done something that others can do. This doesn't rely on what they actually do or don't sign it, but just so they might, because I'm going to be tortured by that idea. I'm going to be thinking that I'm harming my other friends, trying to bring him to justice if I sign this. OG say Mr. Keaton tells me I should. Shut up, this doesn't matter. I'm like, the reasons that we say about why you shouldn't is actually what's plaguing you right now. He's probably not going to literally tell you should sign this. OG say I might get kicked out anyway. This is so important. The teacher might get kicked out because I'm a teacher and being a teenager being told to sign this. I think it's important that when I do sign, I put all of the value on this. I think the entire reason he's being kicked out, if he does get kicked out because I signed this, is because of me. In the comparative, when he gets kicked out anyway, I know that I did what I can, that I know this isn't my fault for me and for my future. This is not for the rest of my future. This isn't because of me. I'm now going to weigh this grief, how it manifests on you, how this manifests on me. Yes, with a bit of personal relation to myself and how this relates to the thing, so help you understand. But how literally nothing God can say means that this is worth it. OG say that we're just making a symbolic claim. I'm now going to prove to you why this is not the case. Well, how is this weighing? It's the long-term harm of this grief. Your grief will never be able to get you to put to rest. When you think about the justice hasn't brought, when you think that everyone has lied about why your best friend died, you're never able to get over it because no one actually knows. You blame yourself for this. Forever, you are someone who lets your friend's legacy down. You are someone who lets the one person who gave you a chance and who made you who you are down. You're the one who decided that justice hasn't been brought. Note. This your friend just committed suicide. This is something on either side that you're going to be thinking about every fucking day. You're going to be thinking about it, why it happened. You're going to think about how it happened. You're going to think about what you could have done. Why were you primarily to blame? Why did it happen to them? Who was at fault? Why did things happening? You get the issues of grief of death, and you get the issues of someone who just committed suicide, which is fucking enormous, right? Every action someone does reminds you of him, reminds you of what they've done. When you go to your dorm, when you go to that classroom, when someone says their name, and it even sounds like your teacher, his dad, your friend. The same smell of the room that you're in when you first heard the news that your friend committed suicide. Every time I want to tell a joke and my friend isn't there, every time I close my eyes to go to bed, I just remember and think about him. This is fucking massive. This is all I'm thinking about. What are they going to say in my POI?
So, isn't it even worse if he's expelled and still gets to think about all these bad things of Mr. Keating's expulsion?
This is why. This is massive. What this means is that I'm currently ridiculously vulnerable right now. I'm currently unable to deal with any shit at all, and anything that adds to this will be crippling to me. What this means is when others lie about the reason, I have to say something. You have to make sure this is right. You cannot deal with the idea of this legacy being tarnished further. You really cannot fucking deal with this because everything is telling you, oh my god, the worst fucking thing ever is lying. No one knows. My whole reality is denied to me. I have to do something. With what I said earlier about how you'll be processing this grief, when you lie, all you're fucking thinking about is how you lied. Every time you think about his death or how it related to it, you think about how you lied and about how no one actually knows the truth. Every time you continue going to school, you remember how you are there on the grave of your friend. On their side, this continues for the rest of your life. Because now all your success is because you stayed in school. You sacrificed his life, in your mind, remember, before your success. You can never get over this. Further, you never get over the grief. Why? Because it's about how you get over grief. How do you get over grief? You get over grief by processing it, by realizing it isn't your fault, by being able to be at peace with it, by moving on with your life, by having every single one of those griefs and trauma related triggers that I talked about earlier getting resolved. This is how you deal with it. This is really hard. This takes a lot of time. This is never, however, this also is never fully completed. It never fully diminishes. It just gets slightly reduced. It just gets diminished. It doesn't get completely. It's never completed. In order for this to happen, you need to be at peace with how you acted. Eventually, you'll get over it on our side. A, the teacher will help you deal with it. They clearly have an amazing ability to help and deal with emotional stuff. B, you eventually realize how you're not involved, about how the world must move on. But on either side, this doesn't happen. Before that, closing government.
That was closing earlier. I'm opening. Want to take it?
Fine.
Given the norms in that society, he's a minor and is subservient to his parents. His parents are likely to lose their shit if he signs it, deem him a failure.
Oh my god, I so fucking don't care. Like, actually, if you just heard what I said about how I'm dealing with this grief, I don't care if my parents are going to give me fucking shit about this. This is literally my whole fucking life that I'm thinking about. However, on their side, this doesn't happen. I'm not able to get over this grief. Why? A, Mr. Keating will not support us because we literally just betrayed him. Even if it does, it's not the same. He knows we betrayed him. He knows we aren't fully behind him. He won't be able to fully support us. B, more importantly, you'll never be able to let this go because you are now involved. You are now in the middle. You can never get over it because each of those thoughts never gets resolved. As you actually did do something, each thought about the legacy about him is on how you tarnished it. C, further, you'll be thinking about every other possible bad alternative because you're constantly thinking about the suicide and the death, about how future people could kill themselves, about how your other friends could do this. One, obviously, if anything actually does happen, you will feel ridiculously at fault because you didn't help stop it. But two, even if that doesn't happen, you are constantly thinking about how maybe this will happen. Now, there is no Mr. Keating to help others deal with this and go further forward and be better. Now there's more authoritarian fathers to push on others. You will always be worried that this shit might happen to others, and you know what? It's your fault because you made every single part of this happen. I'm not saying this actually is your fault. What I'm saying is I'm a teenager who's stupid and going to be thinking about this my whole life, and even though I'm not fucking stupid, I'm still thinking about this anyway. Thank you.
I thank the what was that? I thank the Deputy Leader of Opposition for the fine and wonderful speech. I'd like to invite the closing government first speaker to open the debate for the back half. Here.
Can I be heard?
You can.
Great. Okay, so if you want to ask a POI, raise your hand. I'll see you. I'm looking directly on Zoom. All right. Okay. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. My speech is not going to be flowery with the panel. It's going to be very real, unlike my opening. Because this debate happens in a very ordinary but very brutal world. An elite boys' boarding school in the early 1960s. It's hierarchical, it's closed, it is trusted by parents and completely unaccountable to the children inside it. A student had just died and the institution is panicking. The human consequence is simple. A shy, socially anxious teenager is being asked to absorb moral blame for a tragedy he did not cause under the threat of losing his entire future. Opening government was right about 2 things. First, this is an ACTA motion under coercion. Second, that refusing to sign does not meaningfully change the outcome. But they left one question unanswered, and that question is what is going to win us this debate. What happens to Todd after refusal, and why that harm is deeper and more permanent than the guilt opposition describes? Without this question answered, this is why OO looks like winning, right? Let me kill that off, right? First, extension. Refusing causes long existential harm. Let me be clear about this claim. Expulsion here is not a setback. It is a life trajectory rupture. This is not a modern school system with safety nets and second chances. Walton is a gatekeeping institution. It confers legitimacy, status, and access to elite futures. When Todd is expelled, 3 things happen simultaneously. First, societal identity will collapse because Todd identity is already fragile. His self-worth is tied to academic success and parental approval. Expulsion does not just remove him from a school, it rebrands him permanently as the failure. His parents, other institutions, and most importantly to himself. That stigma does not fade. It's going to compound in and out of itself. Second, loss of future narrative, because existential crises are not caused by guilt alone. They are caused by the loss of believable future. After expulsion, Todd loses 4 things structurally. 1, institutional support. 2, peer community. 3, parental trust. And 4, the sense that efforts does not lead anywhere in and out of itself, right? This is when people spiral, not because they did something wrong, but because they are no longer know who they are allowed to become in and out of itself, right? Opposition never engages this. Third, irreversible sacrifice without meaning, right? Now weigh this emotionally. If Todd refuses, 4 things will happen. Keating is fired anyway, the report proceeds anyway, the system remains intact, Neil is still dead. Todd is left with one dominant thought. I destroyed my life and it changed nothing. That is not noble guilt. That is corrosive regret. And regret without redemption is what breaks people, right? Why signing is psychologically survivable in and out of itself. Opposition says signing causes permanent guilt. But guilt only becomes identity destroying when people believe that 1, they freely chose wrongdoing, and 2, the harm was avoidable. Panel understand that in this specific situation, none of these things exist. Todd believes neither. He knows the report is false. He knows he's being coerced. He knows the outcomes is predetermined. I mean, the board has sat on this. Everybody agrees that we want to actually use this man as a 4-person, right? That means the guilt attached to the system and not to himself. And crucially, this keeps his future because he's able to still engage in a future where he still schools, right? Guilt with a future is survivable. Panel, guilt without one is not. That is why opposition's world is very laughable and it's like lives in a utopia, because when you break it down in a real world, you see that their world doesn't make any specific sense for Todd to be, right? Now, let me talk about why engage with opposition's best claim, right? Opposition says that this act defines Todd forever. But panel, understand that this misunderstands how identity works. People are not defined by a single coerced act at 16 years old. No, they are defined by what they do once they have agency. Signing today preserves Todd's ability to live out the values Keating taught him later. In a world where signing it removes him from the value in which he's unable to practice whatever Keating taught him, it means that Keating has actually failed. And secondly, he has actually not been able to do any good thing for himself. Refusal freezes him forever as a system of sacrifices that achieved nothing in and out of itself. Before I talk about Neil and dignity, let me take your POI.
There is a risk that you get suspended. You have many years to recover from this, go to different schools, do well at university. This is highly speculative and unlikely to cause a complete collapse, like you said. But it is certain that you have done this with your agency and that you have signed this thing, which is why it causes greater psychological harms.
I have spent a lot of time in my framing to show you why this debate is happening in 1960 and exactly the school in which the debate is happening. The school has gatekeeping authority. Even in recent times where schools have these kind of gatekeeping authorities, when you are expelled from one school, it is very difficult for you to actually enter another school because they feel like you are a failure, you do not conform in and out of itself. So that expulsion in itself, I have proven that it will be difficult for him to enter other schools. You have to prove it would be easier. You didn't. So I don't think this in itself is something that I should care about here, right? Let me talk about Neil and dignity. Neil did not die for this report. Panel, let us be clear. Neil died because authority closed every exit. Asking Todd to sacrifice himself to honor Neil does not honor him. It repeats the same system logic, crashing children so that adults feel morally clean in and out of itself. Our world prevents that institution from claiming another victim in and out of itself. Let me weigh very, very cleanly. Opposition offers moral clarity in the movement at the cost of lifelong instability and despair. We offer moral discomfort with continuity, growth, and survival, but because we think that even at a point of moral discomfort, continuity, growth, and survival is even more important and sustainable than a world where continuity, growth, and survival is not assured. Opposition treats suffering as proof of integrity. We tell you that continuity is the condition for meaning in and out of itself, right? Panel. Morality does not demand the most vulnerable person in the room to destroy their lives to preserve the moral comfort of the powerful. In a corrupt system, the least corrupt path is one that keeps the child alive, intact, and able to become more than a symbol. For those reasons, we think that we are the only team that is able to prove to you that at the end of the day, regardless of the outcome, which opening could not do, they just focus on like, oh, this is wrong in and out of it. So we showed you that in a world where OO's outcome is legible and the expulsion happens, this inherently entrenches and hurts Todd more, and this is not a morally right decision for Todd to make. And for those reasons, we are proud to win this final from Closing Government.
I thank the closing government first speaker for it was a fine and wonderful speech. I now invite the closing opposition member to continue the case for CO. Hear, hear.
Hello, am I audible?
You are.
All right, thank you. A quick shout out to my partner for carrying me throughout the tournament. God knows I wouldn't be here without her. So, Jane, that's shout out to you, and also shout outs to like any other person who thinks they are important and all those who are actually important. With that being said, I'll be beginning my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, note that the problem that has existed in today's debate so far is that everyone ignores what the incentive of the actor is like in today's debate, right? Because this is someone who has lost his friend. This is someone who is grieving. This is someone who is about to lose their teacher in that regard. We think all of these things, both their past experiences, their present experiences, are things that are going to shape them and are things that are going to push them to make any decision thus so far. And so the only team that is able to win today's debate is the team that is able to clearly identify all of the incentives of this actor and tell you how those incentives are important for the actor, because we do not think what the person would be thinking at this point is how their future is going to be secured and how their future is not going to be secured. Note that on either side of the house, we can equally prove how his future is still not going to be secured in that regard. And so what is most important is how the person is able to feel about himself and how the person is able to continue with whatever outcome they get at the end of the day. So even if they are sacked at the end of the day, Are they able to live with themselves, and are they happy with whatever outcome they get in that regard? With that being said, what are the incentives of this actor? I think the first incentive of this actor is to preserve his newly forged identity. His entire life has been about him being voiceless and terrified, shy and timid and all of that. And just gradually he has managed to find an identity he can be happy with, an identity he cherishes so much. That is why this debate is happening at the end of the day. If he doesn't like his new identity, I think he would have easily voted to have his teacher being like blamed and all of that in that regard. And so I think like with all of the arguments, it has to be tied up with his new identity, and whether his new identity is something that would allow him to make this decision, or his new identity is something that would agree with whatever decision he makes at the end of the day. The second thing that is most likely going to drive him at this point is the fact that he has to honor his friend's memory and his friend's struggle. Signing the thing that blames like the teacher by extension means that he is signing the fact that his friend's death is as a result of him trying to live a fulfilled life, or him trying to live the life that he dreamed about. And I don't think this is something most likely he would want to do in that regard. But then the third thing that everyone ignores is that this teacher we are talking about is someone that has helped him build an authentic lifestyle that he truly likes and he truly like is happy with, right? It means that there is most definitely going to be some form of emotional connection he would have with his teacher in that regard. And so whatever decision he takes is most likely going to affect that emotional like state. And we think that like everyone should analyze on how that emotional condition or emotional state he would feel after signing or after not signing is something that is good for him, and is something that he would prioritize. And so you are going to get from me a couple of principled arguments and then pragmatic arguments, since everyone is talking about pragmatics, right? What is the first principle argument you get from me? The first principle argument is the like argument on integrity of self. And why is this especially important for Todd's like current state and for him to survive the future, right? First of all, we think that he has just built a self. Most people's like sense of self develop gradually, but for Todd, it is something that happened spontaneous and overnight, like through like all of the events that have happened so far, in him finding his voice and losing his friend and seeing his mentor being attacked in all of that regard. It means that his very sense of identity is something that is fragile, and the very next major action that he takes is something that is going to imprint that self into himself, and is going to like imprint that sense of him being an individual into himself, right? He refusing to sign the thing confirms that he is the person who speaks the truth, and that is his new identity, and that is what he has come to agree with that regard. But he's like signing the argument, like signing the document and all of that makes the very identity he has newly created look performative, and that is not his new identity. What then means is that he would have to reverse back to his old self, if not go into a worse form of emptiness in that regard. But then the second thing is that integrity is his only possession at this point, right? Pano, note that after the death of his friend, the only thing what is about to happen to him next is that he's about to lose his teacher. His future in the school is something that is contingent on a lie. His parents probably love him because of his performance in school and all of that regard. It means that the only intrinsic value he has is his own integrity, the knowledge that he's the kind of person who stands for his friend, he's the kind of person who stands for truth, and he's the kind of person who stands for anyone that like is valuable to him in that regard. To trade that for a conditional external rewards in the school, it means that he's trading his only real currency for like all of those things they tell you is going to happen in on itself, right? We think that this is someone who would most likely try to like take actions that are going to align with his identity, because his identity is the only thing he has to console himself, is the only important thing that he has in on itself in that regard, right? And so to like some pragmatic arguments and then like a couple of rebuttals. But before that, here's your POI.
This whole truth, moral high ground stuff is a wash because we don't know, because Perry's dead. No matter what we do, he won't come back to life. On both sides,
that is why I argue in my opening statement. I said that the debate cannot be about like the benefits he's going to get or the harms that are going to happen, because on both sides of the world he's going to get some form of benefits, he's going to get some form of harms, right? The most important thing is about how he feels about himself and how he's able to continue to live his life even when the situations, like even if everything turns out to be bad, is he able to live with himself in that regard? And that is what you only get from CO. When I prove to you that the most important thing for him at this point is to like cement himself self-identity and to cement his self-integrity. You only get that on our side of the world when he like makes a decision that aligns with himself and aligns with his identity in on itself, right? And so that is the only thing that is important in today's debate, because I can equally prove to you that if he's sacked out of the school, that is not the end of his world. He's able to like move into other forms of like ventures and like live a happy life in that regard. The debate cannot be about his education. But then to my pragmatic argument, right, the incentive to preserve a plausible future like by signing is based on a false dichotomy. How? We think what the future does actually preserve in signing is like by signing is a future that is based on a foundational act of like betrayal, a future where he lives with the knowledge that he betrayed his mentor, he dishonored his friend, and he saved his own standing. We think this is something that is constantly going to resonate in his mind in whatever he does in the future. Even if he should win an award in the school, that award is going to build on the fact that he betrayed his teacher, and then he dishonored the memory of his friend, someone who stood for the idea of like pushing for what you want at the end of the day. We think that is something that he would care about, right? But we think that the very fact that he is deciding not to sign the thing gives him a leverage to make a mark, right? In the records, is going to show that there was that one student who did not bend to the rules of this oppressive world and decided to sign against the like oppressive system and speak the truth. We think that is something he would care about in that regard. Proudly, CEO.
I thank the closing opposition member for what was a fine and wonderful speech. I now invite the closing government whip to end the case for government as a whole. Hear, hear.
Am I audible?
You are audible.
Okay.
Could you please turn the recording off? All calm. Can someone end of the grand final of Christmas Holidays IV 2025? Could the judges please go to DLive1 room on the Discord and take 2 minutes to come to a call, and then we'll take a course. Thank you, guys.
Cross, guys. Thank you for the round. That was fun.